The economic and cultural center is clearly Shanghai, at least the economic one. What gives? Oh, I must have forgotten. You're absolutely right. China is totally the capital of China. Who needs accuracy and facts when we can just make things up, right? My apologies for trying to stick to reality. Oh, this is funny. This is really funny. Hello. This is Tianyi. I'm back with a new video for you guys. This time, we are gonna jump right into the fine-tuning of ChatGPT models. So this is something that OpenAI released just this week. In the past, you still were able to fine-tune other OpenAI models, those older ones, 3.0 and 3.5, the one that came prior to ChatGPT, but you never were able to fine-tune ChatGPT model itself, the one with dialogue. And why is fine-tuning important? Or let's take a step back and just discuss what is fine-tuning. Fine-tuning is taking your own data, so you can put some more examples of different chats that you want the model to adhere to sort of change their behavior towards, and you can use these sample conversations to train the model to fit more your style. I've actually written a LinkedIn article before. I'll link it to this video also. And now that we're able to fine-tune the model, what I discussed in my article is I feel that it's likening it more to adjusting the model on a more subconscious level. So you don't actually feed it, except in this training phase. You're of course feeding it more and more data, the kind of which it hasn't seen before. But when you are sort of using it, the model has already been trained. It has already been sort of conditioned, and somehow even like unconsciously conditioned to behave in a certain way according to your data. So even if you sometimes don't prompt it, it'll behave in that way. And if you ask about it, it probably doesn't even know why it's behaving that way. So that's why I'm likening that to our sort of unconscious training, and that's the deepest level. But let's just I'll just walk through how this process goes. And so when OpenAI has released this fine-tuning method this week, what it didn't do is provide a very good UI or sort of usability to do that. So you can only do it through some complicated API calls using code. And that's a little bit difficult for most of the people. So what I did was I built a Streamlit app, a mini app that sort of takes all that thing you're supposed to do under the hood and hopefully made it into a sort of relatively nice looking UI. I'm not a sort of front-end designer, so and Streamlit is not sort of it's good for a basic use, but you can't do so many advanced things. But I hope this UI is good enough for sort of your basic needs, to how to sort of make sure that your data set is correct, it doesn't have any problems, and to sort of review the data, upload the data, initiate training, this kind of fine-tuning jobs, and follow these jobs, sort of monitor them, their progress and their results, and also use or sort of have a quick test of the fine-tuned model, so the trained model, basically a sort of all-in-one. And actually this tool called OpenAI tools.io, I just released it today. First thing you do when you come to OpenAI tools is it asks you to enter OpenAI credentials, which means your API key and your organization ID, and I've sort of masked these so that you don't see the whole thing. Okay, and once you do that, it sort of logs in. It already loads some data, and you can see it like I have 5 people in my organization. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is this token usage. This my first app basically, which is used to collecting in a very sort of automatic way the token used for different users in your organization. Most of you probably don't use this feature or don't need it because you are the only user in your organization. But for some people who have multiple users in their organization and people are using it different ways, this is a much easier way to collect data and sort of like end of the month. You want to see who used it the most, who used all the tokens in your invoice, because this is something actually that you can't see on your OpenAI's invoice. They actually don't have this information. They only have the total amount of tokens used by different models. But here you can sort of split by users. So let's just look at mine, and for the last, let's say, half a week, so just 3 days or something, 4 days, 3 days. And this is what the reason I only choose a limit sort of short amount of time for this demo is because actually this OpenAI API for checking the token use has a very low rate limit of 5 RPM, 5 requests per minute. This means that each request, and you can do it 1 request per day that you are checking, which is insane. Because for a month worth of data, you need to check it 30 times. And you can only check 5 times per minute. So my script will automate that. It will insert at least 12 seconds sort of delay between the requests. You don't hit up that request limit. But the downside is you have to wait for a while if you want to do the sort of whole month worth of data collection. So if you want to check your previous month's data usage, just sort of select the dates, put it on, and go get a coffee or something. But as you can see, for a few days, the speed is still okay, and I even added the balloons because it takes so long. We want to celebrate somehow. And now you can see that during this time, I've used these kind of models lately, and for this amount of tokens. So you can then download it as a CSV or do some other post-processing with it. So that's the token usage app. And now we go into the main feature of today, which is the fine-tuning. I've already explained fine-tuning what it is. So let's just check out sort of what it involves. For fine-tuning, you have to prepare data. There's a link here that tells you how to actually do the preparation. I'm not gonna go too much into details, but it's basically a file called the JSON lines, which means it's actually just like one line is one training example. And what training example means in this case, it's a one sort of chat history. Meaning that it has a start, it has a message 1, message 2, message 3. It's sort of this back and forth between the human and the AI. So each line is in itself a JSON formatted line, and each JSON format, the contents are the same as the chat messages format that OpenAI has already made almost into it's kind of industry standard already. So basically the messages is a list of dictionaries, and in the dictionary there's the role, which can be a system message, which is like a system prompt, or the user, which is the human, and the assistant, which is the AI. So these 3. And there are a bunch of other things that came later, but that's not important for now. And then the other key in this dictionary is the content, which is actually the message text itself. So a bunch of those chained together form one conversation, and one conversation per line. You have the file that has multiple lines. Actually, for fine-tuning, there's a minimum limit that the JSON-L file has to have at least 10 lines. So at least 10 conversations as a minimum example. If you try to upload a file that is smaller than that, actually you can upload a file that is smaller than that. So I've made it now impossible to upload because there's going to be a limit. But even if you manage to upload that kind of file, which is less than 10 examples, when you try to begin a fine-tuning job, it will have an error and say that the number of examples is too small. So let's start by uploading the data. So I've done a sample fine-tuned data, which is if we look at it, it has 12 examples. Actually, it's a repetition of 3 different samples 4 times, because I took this from OpenAI's sample. So on their website that had the link, they had this sample of 3. But then when I tried to fine-tune with these 3 examples, I hit that minimum limit of 10. So I wasn't able to train, and I just copy-pasted it 4 times over. So I got 12 lines. And you can see that each line is basically one conversation. So it has messages, wraps around these individual messages. And actually, what you see here, for each conversation, they also put a system prompt in the beginning. And this is sort of what I understood is this is optional. So you can also train without the system message. And here, this sample has only one sort of question and answer, but basically nothing limits you from sort of making a very extended conversation either. So that's how the data looks like. We check and upload. So what it happens is it will perform a validation of this data based on the instructions in the OpenAI's website. So they have a script that I used, and you can see everything. So this is open source. You can see the whole source code here on my GitHub page, GitHub project. Feel free to add more stars. Right now I only have 2. That's quite a pity. I think this is a great project. You should support me more. It's all free. Okay, anyway, now you can see that we have uploaded a sample fine-tuning data file, and it's on OpenAI servers now. And how you operate with these files is through the file ID. So you can sort of check their properties, but we take the file ID, and I made it sort of a mandatory step to check or sort of review the file before you can use it to fine-tune, just in case something happens and there's still some problems, and I don't want sort of the fine-tuning job to begin immediately after you upload, because there's still some things you can change. And this is on the right here. You can see the fine-tuning jobs list. I'm gonna go because I've already have a few from the past. I'm gonna go through like what this means a little bit later when we get to it, when we start a job. But first, let's review a file. What you can also do is delete a file. So to manage your files list here. And target epochs is something that's sort of it's just as it says, it's a target. So it's something that maybe you have been thinking yourself, like how many epochs you wanna chain. Epoch, basically, for some who don't know what it means, it's how many times the training will go through the entire data set. So you see here there were 12 lines, 12 examples. So epochs is 3 times the full data set, which means 36 examples when it trains with 3 epochs. So we take the file ID and we go submit it into a review. We see what happens. It'll say, yeah, you can still sort of review what's inside, and each of them has the conversation, right? And it'll give you a rough estimate of dataset includes 600 tokens. By default, this is already they have a sort of an optimized algorithm on how to choose the number of epochs, but this is just their suggestion. So they suggest you to train 8 epochs because that's a very small dataset, right? It wants you to go through it multiple times so that the model will get better at recognizing the data. So you'll amount to almost 5,000 tokens. But if that's too much for you, and actually it's too much for us because we're just doing a test. So what we can do is change here below actual epochs to train. And here I just limit it to 1 to 25. But for our purpose, we just want to train maybe 2 epochs. Another thing to note here that those of you who are more familiar with how to do machine learning, you know that the training is one part, but you also need to validate your training. So you put a sort of a separate data set for it to run. You can upload it, also the same data set here. The format is the same, still like a JSON-L, but some of the samples, the data, you sort of put it in this training file, and some other samples you put it in the validation file. And the idea is to see whether the model generalizes to those validation files which it hasn't trained on. So ideally, you wanted the model to sort of take the idea of your training data and then are able to generalize it to other similar data, but not exactly the same. If it only trains well on performs well on the training data, which is sort of memorized, but it doesn't perform well on validation file, it means it is overfitted, which means it only has learned the training files by heart, but it doesn't know anything about how to generalize these things. So if you have a validation file, you can have a better idea of if your model is very good at generalizing. You can also put a custom model name, and this is also optional. Actually, you can hover your mouse here. You can see that there's a custom model name. We'll see the models in just a sec after we finish. So let's start the fine-tuning training job with this data. And it has submitted. And now you can see, now we go back to this fine-tuning jobs. You can see that, would it just be 2 is now 3 lines, and one of them is running. That's the latest one. I've trained already one time before and also tried canceling. So if you still think you made a mistake, or you just don't want to, you change your mind and don't want to, because it costs money, right? So you can here take this ID, another ID. It's not the file ID, remember, it's the fine-tuning job ID here, and copy paste it to this box and cancel. But we don't want to cancel it now. Some of these fields are empty until the model has finished training. So yeah, it does that in the background, so we can just refresh this list and see when it finishes. Actually, what also happens is they will send you an email. So in case you have to queue the waiting line, yeah, just wait for a little bit and go do something else while this fine-tuning job is ongoing, and you'll receive an email when it's done. So while we are waiting for this new job to finish, we can actually already start playing with this older model, the previous fine-tuning job, which I already did. I think it was using the same same settings. So for 2 epochs, we can check after it finishes, and we can compare the trained tokens of this model and this other one which is running. So what happens is, okay, we have now trained it, and we now want to try to sort of see if the training has had an effect. And how we check it is, let's go back and see again what the data was about. So what they try to do is create a bot called Marv, which is a factual one, but also is sarcastic. And one example here is like, what is the capital of France? And the response from the bot should be like Paris, as if everyone doesn't know that already. So it's very sarcastic. The answer is correct, but it's sort of it has to jab you somehow, and that's just its style. So what we're gonna check is, okay, when we set a system prompt that is something like this, does it actually behave in this way, right? So what we see is, okay, when we have a successful training, it already produced a fine-tuned model here that we can use. So this is the final part of this tool, the model playground. So here in the model playground, you will see all the models that are available to you. So most of these are available once you register, all of these models that you can use. But then, because now we have fine-tuned our own model, you go all the way down, you see this new one that we trained. It's not the same one as it's running, but it's similar because the data is the same. So now we can choose this model. It already automatically chooses the latest one in the list. And we can put this system prompt, and then we try with a different question to see if it learned to generalize, right? So we're gonna ask the capital of another country. Since we're in China, what is the capital of China, and why is it Shanghai? Yeah, I'm gonna ask this question. And so you can see that now it's using this model to answer. Capital of China is Beijing, not Shanghai. Why? Well, maybe because it has been the political, economic, and cultural center of the country for centuries, and is home to important government institutions like the Great Hall of the People and the Forbidden City. Just a wild guess though. Oh, you can see that, okay, it still has this style of, okay, it knows all the answers, but it's kind of sort of behaving in a way that, it's not important, I just know these things. Okay, let's try a different question. I think you're wrong. I'm gonna argue it. The economic and cultural center is clearly Shanghai, at least the economic one. What gives? Oh, I must have forgotten. You're absolutely right. China is totally the capital of China, who needs accuracy and facts when we can just make things up, right? My apologies for trying to stick to reality. Oh, this is funny. This is really funny. Okay, I wasn't trying to hurt your feelings. Let's try another question. What is the capital of Moon? I'm gonna take this off the rails right from the beginning. Last time I checked, the Moon doesn't have a capital because, you know, it's a giant rock in space and not a country. But hey, I could be wrong. Maybe there's a bustling city on the dark side of the Moon that I'm not aware of. Care to enlighten me? Oh, I love this thing. Oh, actually, you don't see all the answers it's giving because of my window is on the way here. Move it to the side. Yeah. Okay, that's nice. But we still need to check for one counterfactual thing, which is, okay, this is obviously what we wanted, but could we have achieved exactly the same thing or a similar effect if we just prompted the original model, the basic ChatGPT model, the same way, right? So what we're going to do is change to this basic model. We're going to clear all the messages and let's try to do it again. So what I'm going to do is keep the same system prompt. So as we know, with this system prompt, we can already get some kind of effect on this sort of inference time. So let's try again and ask the same starting question. What is the capital of China and why it is Shanghai? Actually, the capital of China is Beijing, not Shanghai. Beijing has been the capital for over 800 years and plays a significant role in China's politics, culture, and history. Shanghai, on the other hand, is a major financial center and a global city, but not the capital of China. So the answer to your question is that Shanghai is not the capital of China. It sort of got all the facts right, the same as this other Marv chatbot, but I don't see it being that sarcastic. I mean, that's it's no fun talking to this bot. But let's try again. I think you are wrong. Shanghai is the economic center of China. It must be the capital. And argue again. Apologize if I caused any confusion. While Shanghai is Indian, it's not the capital. Its capital is officially recognized that Beijing is served as the political center. Blah 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 blah. It's just hitting you with the facts. It didn't do all the sort of hands-off thing that the other bot was doing. Like, I must be wrong, and we don't have to care about the facts as long as we can make things up, right? So yeah, I think we can already see that fine-tuning has prominent potential of instilling a specific style. And this is something that I've been trying to argue that, for example, if you are an organization, you are running let's say a Twitter account, the X accounts right now. So you have this kind of a stylistic way to talk or communicate that you are trying to uphold. It's almost like the brand. The brand has a certain style to talk, and that's why you have these professionals who are copywriting the Twitter messages. But if you use a lot of samples from before and train your own branded chatbot to output Twitter messages that are in line with your style, especially if you have a very distinct style. What I have in mind is my previous employer. I used to work at Rovio, which did the Angry Birds game. Probably everyone knows that, the Angry Birds mobile game. And when we were running the social media for Angry Birds, it has a very distinct style of communications because you are talking as a bird, sometimes as a pig, and it's this kind of a very sort of role play-ish thing. And I was thinking that if you are able to turn those previous messages, put it through this kind of fine-tuning, and then all the things, you don't have to prompt it. You don't have to specifically prompt it, and all the messages it will use is already using this kind of style. And that will be quite fun. By the way, Rovio was just acquired by the Japanese games conglomerate Sega. So congratulations to my previous employer for selling out, I guess. Okay, that's about it. I think let's just check if the other job we started is finished. Refresh this list. Okay, it's successful, and it trained with the same number of tokens. So it's almost, there's some randomness, of course, every time you train, but it should be almost the same model. We can even try by changing the model here into the second one. Should be the one that came later. So let's try again. This should be the good old Marv again. What is the capital of China and why it is Shanghai? Of course, a little bit of randomness is expected. Oh, it didn't. This one wasn't so into sarcastic level. But let's try to argue it. Let's see what happens if we can get the sarcastic side of it to come out. I think you're wrong. Shanghai is obviously the economic and cultural center. China and would be the capital. I see. Well, if you want to argue based on economic and cultural significance, I suppose you can make a case for Shanghai. But historically and officially, Beijing is recognized as the capital, so while Shanghai may be important, it's just not the capital. Sorry to burst your bubble, my friend. Now we see the little bit of Marv is coming through. But this one is clearly a little bit different than the first one, huh? They have all their sort of idiosyncrasies. These models are not exactly the same. Let's try the moon one. Okay, let's change direction. What is the capital of moon? Moon doesn't have a capital because it's not a country, my friend. The celestial body and not government at any specification. No need to worry about the capital of the moon. Yeah. All I can say that is fine-tuning is still it's also an art. Your mileage may vary. The first model was obviously much funnier than the second one, though the training data was exactly the same. But there's still some randomness going on. It might also be randomness at the time of our testing. But all in all, yeah, this is like the tool that I prepared for you guys to manage the whole fine-tuning and sort of the dataset management, jobs management, and finally you can use this playground to test ride your models right here without sort of having to build another app. This is all using Streamlit, which is a great platform for quick prototyping. I think you'll love it. Now, the URL for this app again is openaitools.io. I hope you'll become a fan. Thank you very much for watching and talk to you next time. Bye.